Goedemiddag. Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. Nick and I said that we will do this bilingual, so some of it will be in Afrikaans, other will be in English. So dis regtig heartwarming om julle almal hier te sien, hoor. Dit is 'n belangrike dag om hier te wees. Ek sien nou hoekom ek gesê het, ons kerkie sou te klein gewees het hiervoor. Julle sal op mekaar se skote moes gesit het. Okay. Kom ons bid gou saam. Ons kom onbevrees na U toe, Here, want U is die koning. U heers hier op aarde, maar ook in die hemel. U is die groot consistency. U is die een wat nooit verander nie. Is die een wat altyd vir ons lief is en bereid om saam ons se journey. Dis in U hande, Here, wat ons vertrou. Pieter Pentz en die wat ons vooraf gegaan het aan die dood, Here. Het volgende al by die graf gesê, ons het volkome vertroue in die hantering van wie hy is in die hiernamaals. Ons het volkome vertroue, Here, dat U sy vrou, sy kinders, sy geliefdes sal versorg. Jy is die consistency, Here. Jy is die een wat ons die hele tyd dieselfde van verwag en dieselfde kry. Jy is die verbondsgod wat gesê het, ek sal jou nooit verlaat nie, ek sal by jou bly deur alle tye. Dankie daarvoor. As ons hier saam is, Here, help ons om alles wat ons hier sê en onthou, dat het sal wees tot eer van U naam. Amen. Okay. Ons begin deur te sing All Things Bright and Beautiful. Daar's 4 verse om die chorus. As jy kan staan, staan. As jy nie kan of wil nie, is ook okay. Maar daar's 4, kom ons vat ons tyd. Woorde is belangrik, nee, ons moet hierdie ruimte met woorde en veral worship woorde vul vir ons almal se versorging. Kom ons sing dit lekker saam. I hope that enlightened your heart a bit. Such a beautiful song. When we were at the grave this morning, everything was so perfect and beautiful. It was a nice sunny morning with flowers, insects and everything. It was just tremendously beautiful. Toe ek en Nick praat oor volgens skrifgedeelte en met Leslie by en Wouter by. Toe kom ons by dieselfde skrifgedeelte uit en dit is Prediker 3, dit is vir jou baie bekend. Ek wil dit graag in Afrikaans lees, het wat ons vanoggend gedoen het, maar ek sal 'n stukkie daarvan weer in Engels herhaal. Dit is baie bekend. Hier is ou wysheid julle. Ou wysheid. Vir alles is daar 'n vasgestelde tyd. Daar's 'n tyd vir elke saak onder die hemel. 'n Tyd om geboorte te gee, 'n tyd om te sterf, 'n tyd om te plant en 'n tyd om uit te trek wat geplant is. 'n Tyd om 'n lewe te neem, 'n tyd om te genees, 'n tyd om af te breek, 'n tyd om op te bou. 'n Tyd om te huil, 'n tyd om te lag, 'n tyd om te rou, 'n tyd om te dans. Tyd om klippe weg te gooi, 'n tyd om klippe bymekaar te maak. Tyd om te omhels, 'n tyd om ver te wees van omhelsing. 'n Tyd om te soek en 'n tyd om te laat wegraak. 'n Tyd om te bewaar, 'n tyd om weg te gooi. 'n Tyd om te skeur, 'n tyd om toe te werk. 'n Tyd om stil te bly, 'n tyd om te praat, 'n tyd om lief te hê, 'n tyd om te haat. 'n Tyd van oorlog, 'n tyd van vrede. Wat 'n voordeel het die een wat werk van dit waarmee hom afstof. Ek het die taak gesien wat God aan mense gegee het om hulle te belas. Alles het hy mooi gemaak op sy tyd. Hy het ook die besef van 'n tyd stuur in hulle harte gegee, sonder dat die mens enigstens die werk van God van begin tot einde kan pyl. Ek het besef dat daar tussen hulle niks beter is as om vreugde te ervaar en die goeie te geniet in die lewe. Ja, elke mens dat hy eet en drink en die goeie geniet by al sy inspanning. Dit is 'n gawe van God. Ek het besef dat alles wat God doen sal vir altyd bestaan. Daarin kan niks toegevoeg word nie, niks daarvan weggeneem word nie. God het dit gedoen sodat hulle ontzag vir hom sal hê. Wat ook al gebeur het, was lankal daar en wat gaan gebeur het lankal gebeur. God haal weer na vore wat verby is. Die hoogtepunt van die teks is om te sê, so tussen die seisoene deur, geniet dit om te leef. Later in Ecclesiastes 9, he repeated, that helps a lot, thank you very much. Ecclesiastes 9 says, verse 7, be happy, enjoy eating and drinking. God decided long ago that this is what you should do. Dress up, comb your hair, look your best. Life is short, and this was so beautiful for me. And you love your wife, so enjoy being with her. It kind of depends if you really love your wife, it seems to me, but really, enjoy her. This is what you're supposed to do as you struggle through life on this earth. Work hard so you can enjoy. But we decided there's one thing that a farmer knows better than anything is to be okay with the seasons. You can't force the seasons. You've got to be patient for the right season. There's a few seasons here, a few times that Ecclesiastes mentioned that kind of leave you uncomfortable. Things about making war, hatred. But this wisdom is so old that it notes the truth. Ons almal weet dat die lewe is nie smooth sailing nie. En as jy veronderstel om te wees nie. Nee. Daar moet seisoene kom. Dit kan nie die hele tyd son skyn nie. Ons bikers en die boere beklei gewoonlik mekaar, ons bid vir verskillende weer. Ons wil hê dit moet reën nie en hulle wil hê dit moet reën. But the thing is that, as Leslie said, this was a scripture close to his heart. Because you can't force the seasons, you got to accept the seasons. And as soon as you start doing that and you work with the seasons, then you can kind of relax and start enjoying the life you have. And this is the wisdom that Ecclesiastes wants us to give. I remember the first time I met Peter, he was writing an acceptance speech for being Farmer of the Year. And I remember it as if it was the other day. And he wanted to talk about the whole thing of being a chop of the block. So I learned a lot from my father, and I want my sons, my daughters to learn what I learned from him. A chip of the old block. And that's why the scripture is so appropriate. We've got to teach our children to accept the seasons. Otherwise, they're going to get stuck protesting against the seasons and not enjoy life. En die kinders gaan dit net nie meer sê, maar ons weet hoe lief hy sy vrou het. Ek onthou Leslie het my eendag gebel, dink sy, daar was 'n skaapbout of 'n varkbout wat my naam opgehad het met 'n glas of 'n beker wyn, of 'n bottel, kom ons sê eers so. En toe was hulle besig om voor te berei vir 'n white Christmas in Switserland. En sy was dus 'n dogtertjie. So I'm not going to take much of your time, because the people who knew him best is going to stand here and talk about Peter and do the eulogies. I just wanted to bring my part of this knowledge of who he was. He's been through a lot of seasons, but he accepted them, working very hard. And working hard and enjoying life. But the big reason that him and I had that conversation, because he was the Farmer of the Year, I remembered later after we spoke, is to talk about the whole thing is that there's somebody bigger than the seasons. And this is the oldest wisdom ever. To know that yes, there are seasons, and we've got to accept the seasons and enjoy life, but never forget. And Ecclesiastes says that. There's someone bigger than the seasons, bigger than the farmers, bigger than us. And we just sang that. He created it all. En ons het nou net gesing, dit wat hy gemaak het, is beautiful. Is kosbaar, ons moet dit vashou, ons moet dit bewaar. Nee. Mense sal inry by groot pos, as 'n groot bord wat sê hier is 'n bewaringsarea. En dis wat ons moet doen. Ons moet nie net hard werk nie. Ons moet besef dat iemand groter is ons, wie se droom die heeltyd was, dat wat ons doen op aarde is significant. Your life means something. And that was the idea all the time. That is the oldest wisdom ever. It's older than any religion you will ever find. That being someone is important. And of course, there are people that just make you feel important when you are with them, like Peter Pentz. But who you are is significant. So yes, work hard. Enjoy the seasons, but please, while you have the opportunity to live, whatever season you're in, I don't know what season you're in, take this chip of the old block and live it thoroughly because it means something. I'm going to invite his own to speak to you. I'm going to start with Josh. Please.
Society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. When I think of Oupa Peter, I can't help but think of this quote. Each year he would hitch his trailer and head to Tilbach Nursery with great excitement to go and buy trees. Each tree's location would be carefully thought of in advance, and he'd know exactly how many trees he'd like to get and what type, though it would mostly have been his favorites, pepper trees and wild figs. He knew he'd never sit in their shade, but he planted them anyway, because that's who he was. He cared for the farm, for the people who would come after him, and for leaving something behind that would last. For me, those trees will always remind me of the kind of man he was. Forward-thinking, hard-working, and deeply committed to doing things the right way. A couple of weeks ago, I went to visit Oupa when he gave me his Leatherman multi-tool, the one he had carried and used for so many years. When he handed it to me, he smiled and said, "Good as new." And he was right. After decades of use, it had stood the test of time. Many other tools had come and gone, claiming to be the best, but none could ever really outlast the Leatherman. In many ways, this tool reminds me of Oupa himself. Like the Leatherman, he was strong, reliable, and built to last. He was a man of many talents and many callings. A husband, a father, an Oupa, a farmer, a businessman, a visionary, a mentor, and a leader. Whatever role life demanded of him, he rose to it with purpose. And like the Leatherman, he never wore out, never gave up, and never stopped being useful right to the very end. Oupa was a man of many hats, literally and figuratively speaking. One would always find him wearing a beautiful hat, one fitting for the day and the occasion. His hats to me are a symbol of the ever-gentleman he was, reminding me of what Catherine would mention would be one of the many things she would miss of him. He would always lift his hat when greeting her, giving her a kiss on the head when doing so. Oupa Peter was a man of few words, but an exceptionally good listener. He never hurried to give a conclusive answer. Many a times, he wouldn't give an answer at all, leaving you to wonder if you heard the question in the first place. And then, sometimes a day or two later, he would come back with a response, one that you could tell he had given real thought to, wanting to offer the best answer he could. I remember one day driving with Oupa on the farm. I had asked him a question, but he stayed silent, not really acknowledging it. We drove into a camp where there were plenty of bitterbullas. He stopped, looked at him, leaned over towards me, and muttered one of his favorite sayings, "Hulle betaal nie rent nie." Then he pointed out that there was a pick on the back of the bakkie and set me to work pulling out the bitterbulla, giving a short hoot of the horn every now and then to let me know that I had missed one. I'll admit, at the time, I was a little irritated. Not only had he avoided my question, but now he had me doing this job instead. After about 20 minutes, he called me back, and off we went again, still without an answer. But then 2 days later, he came back to me with a clear, thoughtful response. One that you could tell he had really considered, wanting to give me the best answer he possibly could. That was Oupa Peter's wisdom. He listened first, thought deeply, and only then did he speak. And because of that, when he did share his opinion, people stopped and listened. His words carried weight, not because he spoke often, but because he spoke with integrity and care. It's one of the reasons he was so deeply respected, whether on the farm, in business, or within our family. Oupa and I shared the same love for Angus cattle, a passion that tied us together in a very special way. Some of my fondest and last memories with him are of driving through the farm, looking at the cattle, and listening to his thoughts. Those drives were never just about cattle. They were lessons, moments of learning that I will carry with me forever. He was meticulous in everything he did, with a clear reason and purpose behind every decision, whether it was choosing a mating, evaluating a cow, or deciding how to manage a herd. His eye for cattle was second to none. Even in his later years, he never wanted to miss a day working with the cattle. And if he couldn't be there, we'd have to change the dates for him to be able to join us. That is how much it meant to him. And to me, those days with him side by side among the cattle will always be one of the greatest gifts he left me. Oupa was larger than life in many ways. In his presence, his achievements, and the respect he earned. But to me, he was more than all of that. He was my Oupa. He was my mentor and also my business partner. The one who taught me by example that whatever you do it fully. The one who showed me that strength and gentleness can live within the same man. The one who listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words carried weight. Though we will miss him more than words can ever say, we can take comfort in knowing that he leaves this world behind a better place than he found it. And that is the mark of a truly great man. Rest well, Oupa. We will sit in the shade of your trees. We will carry forward the lessons you had taught us, and we will always remember you. Not just for what you have achieved, but for who you were to us. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon, friends and family. Dad always used to say that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth and misuse it accordingly. So I'm going to be brief like he always was. I knew him a long time, 50 years. Eers as 'n buurman, toe as 'n stiefpa, toe net as 'n pa, toe as 'n oupa, en toe as 'n oupa grootjie. We liked a lot of the same things. We got on famously. I would be often invited to come have a meal when he felt like company. And if I hesitated, I'd be asked if the food wasn't good enough at his house. Funny. We never seemed to disagree. Dad, wherever you are, may you have a big Angus herd to go to every day with Josh. May all the whiskies be single malts. May all your meals be home cooked. May you have a little Sienna that her oupa darling can dote on. May you have a wife like Ma Leslie. Rest assured that we will take care of Ma, just as you always have done. I'm just going to quote something quickly. Ik gaan net iets lees van Jan Silje, 'n gediggie, wat hy geskryf het oor generaal de Wet, maar ek dink is baie toepaslik vir Dad. Stil broers, daar gaan 'n man verby. Hy groet en dis verlaas. Daar's nog maar net een soos hy. Bekyk hom goed. Goodbye, we will miss you forever.
So good.
I'm going to be reading a poem from my Oma Leslie to her beloved husband Peter and my Oupa. Go placidly amend the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you'll become vain and bitter, for always there'll be a greater and lesser person than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Take kindly the counsel of years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you from the sudden misfortune, but do not stress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. Love you stukkend. Thank you. Leslie.
Daddy, ours wasn't always the easiest relationship. There were times I struggled to understand your ways. You were a complex, driven, and deeply principled man. Your expectations were high of yourself, of others, and especially of those you loved. As a child, sometimes I didn't understand your strength, and discipline came from a place of love. But looking back now, I see how much you gave, how deeply you cared, and how quietly you showed up for the people who needed you. Some of my most treasured memories are from my early years. We had a standing Saturday date, just the two of us, first shopping together, and then tea at the top of Stouterford's. You always kept your promise to kiss me goodnight, no matter how late you got home from the farm. I would wait, half asleep, just to feel the soft brush of your beard against my cheek. You brought magic into our home. You were the best Easter bunny, the most convincing Father Christmas. You gave us the gift of so many beautiful, wonderful Langebaan holidays, learning to ski on the lagoon, and a memory of a late-night fishing trip, bringing in my 12th birthday, and you singing to me at midnight your funny rhymes that you would make up in the car. Then more recent memories of our one-on-one chats during my hospital visits, while I filed your nails and massaged your feet. Later in life, even when I thought I had things figured out, you were the one I turned to when life became filled with adversity. I didn't always take your advice, but I wish I had. There are too many things I will miss to mention, but a few simple ones are how I would give you my knives to sharpen, how you would do it so lovingly. Walking into your home after work and hearing you say, "You look pretty today, Diane. Are you having a whiskey or wine?" Witnessing how deeply you loved Leslie and how much happiness you brought to each other. When you would visit me and we'd walk through my garden and I would show you what was blooming or what I had planted, and observing your proud smile. It was a privilege to help care for you in your final days and to make sure you passed with the same dignity that you always stood for. You were so much to so many, a respected boss, a loyal friend, devoted family man, loving husband, proud grandfather. But to you, to me, you are my daddy. And no matter how much time passes, or how grown up I may seem, in my heart, you will always be my hero, and I will always be your little girl. I just want to end off with a poem from Maya Angelou that I thought was so apt. When great trees fall, When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses and even elephants slumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, some things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory suddenly sharpened, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. But when a great soul dies after a period of peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly, spaces full with a kind of soothing electric vibration, our senses restored, never to be the same, whisper to us. They existed. He existed. We can be, and be better, for he existed. Thank you for everything, for the love, the lessons, and the quiet ways you shaped who I am today. I love you and will miss you always.
Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here today. Dad, the void you left behind really feels impossible to fill. Many times I came to you for advice in life, but never as much in this last week. You didn't just live, you led. You left behind a legacy that many will follow. Not only because you gave them advice, but because you gave them direction. There are many people out there whose hearts you touched in many different ways, but it was your way. And because it was your way, they will cherish memories and never ever forget what you meant to them. Phew, I'm shaking. The lessons you taught us, respect, strength, and kindness, they are not lessons for us to keep, but lessons for us to pass forward and to share with the world. You lived every day to its fullest. You really, really did. And today is testament to that, with everybody seated here today. And they're seated here today because they want to be here, Dad. They're seated here today because they admire you and respect for you, for not only what you've done to them, but what you've done for everybody out there. I thank you for believing in me, Dad. Thank you. And thank you for being my father. I could never, ever, ever have asked for a better father.
Henry?
I was 10 years old when I met William, I remember it like yesterday, my mother taking me in the car to Peter's house in Tukai on the mountain. And the invitation was to come and have a swim with Peter in their swimming pool. And they had a lovely swimming pool there. And there was William, and I met him for the first time. And the three of us became good friends that had lasted a whole lifetime. In his late teens, we all Peter gave us the idea that he was on some sort of a mission to make a success of what he was going to do in the farming game. And he used to explain to me and say, well, you know, a good cow looks like this. And you know what, AI, there's this AI thing. We really got to push that. And I thought, my word. Peter, you know, is a young guy, and he's flat out. He's on it. He knows what he wants. So we were a sort of a threesome where William was the chicken farmer, Peter was the dairy farmer, and Henry was the concrete farmer. Anyway, we had this unspoken mission to make sure that where we moved in our respective family businesses, we would give it our best shot. Peter was a talented man, and he had this incredible eye for so many things. I mean, cows, an AI, a young Peter on it, busy with this way, he's going to do things, and he's going to improve what the family's business. And the same was for William. He was flat out, and of course, I was trying my best. But Peter had an eye for architecture. And a little later on, the next thing is he built this beautiful house on Tukai Mountain. And a beautiful house it was. It was a large landscaped area high up there, and the beautiful interior. And in those days, you know, it was the era of the dinner party. So in that home, we had the most wonderful dinner parties. And I remember these lovely parties we had while we were having fun around the dining room table. Our children, who were the similar age, were playing in the garden and having a hectic time there. So the next thing I'd like to touch on is that Peter had an eye for antiques. And we shared a real common interest there. And Lynette and I and Peter, we spent so many hours together attending auctions, going to antique shops, always on the lookout for a really fine piece of 18th century furniture and in really good condition. And it became a kind of obsession with us. This is something we really had to do. And it's to be seen, for example, in the Manor House at Grootpoort. There's the most wonderful collection of stuff. If you go into his home, it's the same thing. Each piece, something exceptional, something very special. Peter also had an eye and a feeling for heritage. The Grootpoort restoration was truly beautifully done. And he got hold of a friend of ours, Len Raymond, who was a restoration builder and a really knowledgeable man in the field. And between the two of them, they set to work. And I must say, I think everybody that visits Grootpoort has something good to say about how well and how beautifully and how correctly everything was restored. Grootpoort could not have landed a better owner. Peter also had an eye for engineering, and he had a big feeling for the land. And I remember one day Lynette and I were visiting Grootpoort, and he said, "Come, you must see, we're busy putting new contours. We're plowing these contours on these fields." We went up there, and there was a tractor plowing the contour, and he said, "You see, this is done just perfectly." And you know what? Next thing is I've got to build afleibane. I'm going to do a proper job. So anyway, when we saw the afleibane after a couple of months, my word, he had a concrete foundation like you can't believe, thick and strong and with steel, and the uprights were all building blocks and they had to be precise, and each of the contours would exit into, an outlet. I mean, it was just fantastic, and I'm sure that all his neighbors must have thought, hierdie man is mal. I mean, this is over the top, this is ridiculous. But here, those same afleibane are today as good as the day that they were built. Peter was a generous person. I once mentioned to him, it was in the 1980s, I said, Peter, our delivery truck, we're in this plastic business called Polyoak, he's a pain in the bum. It doesn't want to start every second day. We've got to push it and so on. But Peter, I've got to attend to this thing. And he said, no, but why do you want to worry with that? I've got a truck for you. I thought, what, a truck for me? He said, yeah, I've got a delivery truck here, and take it. Go and use the truck. Go and do your deliveries. And what's more, I've got a driver for you. Very good guy. So just take the truck, take the driver, and get on with it. So Peter, now when do you need it back? He says, don't come with the question like that. You just bring it back when you're finished with it. And we kept this truck for about 6 or 9 months. I can't remember now. And Peter, the generous man. Peter had an eye for detail. I remember once back on the farm, he said to me, we got to a gate. Now I get out and open the gate, So he says to me, there's more to a gate than meets the eye. And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, you got to have a proper post for the gate, and it must hang square. And he said, you see that little catch? And it was a tricky catch. He said, no, that's a decent catch. And I couldn't help thinking to myself, this is amazing. Peter has got such a lot on the go, but he's got time for the little catch on the gate. And that really, really impressed me. Peter was a man with a huge presence. I mean, when he walked into a room, you just knew without looking that Peter had arrived. He was a real impressive character, and we've heard a man of no words, I would say, or very few words, and yet he had this amazing presence. Now I've got a story about Peter's gallantry. As I was saying, it's the era of the dinner party, and we invited Peter and his girlfriend to the dinner party at our house. So now we're sitting there, enjoying the dinner and everything, and halfway through the meal, Peter says, I've got something really important to attend to. So I thought, now what could that possibly be? Is it a phone call, or maybe he wants to go to the bathroom? I don't know. But anyway, he jumps up, and the next thing he's on his hands and knees in front of his wife-to-be. So he says to her, will you marry me? But I mean, you've got to imagine this huge chap just on his knees, he's on his hands and knees like this. And he's saying, will you marry me? And of course, the answer was a solid yes. And then the party was on, then we did some proper celebrating. Our friend Peter, this amazing character who only settled for perfect everything. Peter, you have been an inspiration and taught us so much. William, Veronica, Lynette, and I have walked a long and happy road with you, with so much in common. Your presence will live on in the lives of many.
Ek moet sê 'n week gelede was mens vol bravade, jy wil praat by die begrafnis. En dan as mens nou voorkom staan en sê jy bietjie spyt ek het my ma se Urbanal vanoggend gevat het. vra om verskoning is baie van die goed wat ek gesê het, wat ek nou gaan sê, dieselfde is as wat die vorige sprekers gesê het. Ons het nou nie notas uitgeruil voor die tyd nie. A few years ago, Oupa received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the ARC. And this was for his contribution to the dairy industry in South Africa. Although he stepped away from the dairy industry many years before that, Oupa collected quite a few accolades in his life. But he was never really fond of big social events, even if it was in honor of his work. But I knew deep down he actually loved it. But in any case, I persuaded him to go to this event and said I will accompany him and I'll even write this speech for him. He could just simply read it off. And I felt like one of those US presidential speech writers. So off, Oupa and I and the speech, we went to Groot Visantekral to this do where we arrived. And Brayton, who's also here today from Agri Expo, awarded Oupa this award. And then Oupa was there with a little speech. And then Oupa just put the speech down. And I thought, wat gaat nou aan? And then Oupa just started speaking. And, my entire speech gone with that. And he began by sharing that when he was a little boy, his mother taught him a line from Psalm 23, verse 5, which said, "My cup runneth over." And he said that on that day, he truly felt that his cup did run over. And I think when I'm looking back on Oupa's life, one could say, yes, his cup did run over, and what a life he led. And one can't help think about Frank Sinatra, who famously sang, he said, "I've lived a life that's full, I've traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way." And don't we know that Oupa most certainly did things his way. He was a remarkable man, and there's too little time to capture the fullness of Peter Pentz. And as many people said, Oupa had a presence that you felt the moment he entered the room. You knew he arrived. In his quiet but powerful way, he worked and toiled this earth. Like when Henry said this morning, a man of the land. Now, as previously mentioned, Oupa did truly believe that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and one should use them accordingly. And once again, he was a man of few words, but when he spoke sense, and Oupa surely didn't suffer any fools. He listened so carefully that you might forget that he was paying attention, until he surprised you. You would speak in a conversation and mention that some sort of subject was quite interesting to you, and you would carry on the conversation, and lo and behold, the next morning, Oupa would arrive back on the farm with a book on that exact same subject. And then take the moment to explain to you why this is important, where did he buy this book, and why you should read it. To illustrate in a very simple way, I never thought that Oupa knew my cat's name. So one day we were sitting on the stoep and I challenged him. I said, "Oupa, I'll give you 1,000 rand in cash if you can say what my cat's name is." And we had a few cats. And Oupa just smiling, he said, "That's easy, his name is Volley." I was stunned. I later joked that and said to Oupa, "Yo, Volley just became one hell of an expensive pussy," to which Oupa replied with a wink, "Wait till you get older, then you'll see how expensive they really get." Oupa was respected by many, and he was well connected, and his work ethics were admired by all. Now, if you ever needed something done or needed something built, he was your go-to man, whether it is to build a cottage or get a certain piece of furniture or a door handle from the 18th century. He would do it himself, or he would know someone that would assist you in that. And then he would say to you, "I know someone," and then he'd tell you, "Get a pen and paper," and then you'd come sit next to him and with a pen and paper and wait 30 seconds. And then he said, "Now what you do is, now you phone this person. His name is Michael. M-I," then he would spell the name for you as if that really mattered. And then he said, "You phone him and you speak to Michael. You don't speak to John, you speak to Michael. And then you tell him, I said you must phone him. Now you ask him for this." And lo and behold, when you phoned that Michael, whoever, things got done, because Oupa had that presence about him that respect, and people loved it for him. But I must say, Oupa was a gentle giant, and he had a very charming side to him. And, like Josh mentioned, the lift of the hat when he greeted a lady, and then shaking their hands with both his two hands. And there would be many times that he would say some quirky stuff, which quite surprised all of us about his riz. I mean, the other day at the cellar, he was seeing off this visitor, and he took off his hat, and he took the lady and said, you live your best life. I just thought, where does this come from? Oupa was a businessman of note, and he always knew what was going on. And beware your soul if you don't know what was going on. So on Sunday evenings, you'd always get a call from Oupa. Are you here? And he said, no, thank you, I'm well, and you, Oupa? And then you'd wait 20 seconds, and you think the line went dead. It's like, hello, hello. And Oupa would stand there. It's like, it was be on the other line. Good, how's the sales? And then you had to say how the sales are, about the weekend of the sales. And then you'd find my dad afterwards doing the exact same conversation, making as if he did not know the sales, just to see what the real truth is. Now, Oupa never sent a WhatsApp or an email in his life. But he was on all the WhatsApp groupies and knew exactly what was going on all of them, including the Boerevereniging. And he would sometimes forget that Oupa actually read this stuff. So on this Sunday call, he would often ask, so what's the story about so-and-so? And that you would recall from reading on the WhatsApp. Now, Oupa believed in this saying that if you take care of the pennies, the pounds will take care of themselves. And one afternoon after lunch, Oupa told me that he had a few boxes, empty boxes of the wine that he took from the cellar that he'd like to return to me. And I said, Oupa, well, 3 or 4 boxes, don't go to all that trouble to return them. I mean, just chuck them away. And he said to me, how much does these boxes cost us? I said, I don't know, but I can phone Vilna and quickly find. He said, you don't know. How don't you know? Okay, so as you do, you immediately find out the price of the boxes, and you come back to him and say, Oupa, well, this box costs 20 rand, this is 25. And Oupa said, well, if you make the sums, that if a box costs 20 rand, and he brought 4 boxes back, that you could reuse, that's 80 rand saved. That was the type of man he was. Oupa was a big man with a soft heart, a hard work, a visionary, a leader, an example to us all. He will be dearly missed, but his legacy lives on. Lucas, our winemaker, said the Monday after Oupa's passing, he said, when he arrived at the cellar, he said, if we look around, Oupa is everywhere. He's in the cellar, he's between the Angus. His legacy lives on forever. Nou, nes allemaal anders gedoen het, ga ek ook afsluit my gedig, maar dis 'n verwerking van Breitenbach se gedig van Ek sal sterf na my vader gaan. Getiteld, maar Oupa sal sterf in plaas toe gaan, met apologie aan Breitenbach. Maar Oupa sal sterf in plaas toe gaan, daling toe, met sterk bene, blink in die lig, waar die melk sal stil geword het, en die wynkelder vol asemlewe, waar die lande om onthou en die koringare sy naam fluister. Hy is met min bagasie, maar met hart vol oeste, en generasie se werk in sy hande, oor die heuwels en deur die blomme, ter plaas toe gaan. Die son sal nog op grote post klop, die wind sal deur die wingerde huil en lag, ons oor die trekker dren in die oggend, ons sit om die tafel, Oupa vertel, en ons luister weer na die stories van melk na wyn. Kinders, kleinkinders, vriende, moenie huiwer nie, die lewe hang nou soos druiwe aan die stok, maar die dood beskaam nie. Ons kom en ons gaan, soos water uit die kraan, soos klank uit die mond, soos ons kom en ons gaan. Ons bene ken die vryheid van die plaas. Kom saam met hom in sy sterf en sy terugkeer plaas toe, daling toe, waar die sterre wag in die Engelse wei. Laat ons sterf en vergaan en vrolik wees. Maar Oupa het 'n lang pad gestap.
Okay, I've been asked to say the thanks for everything. I'd firstly just like to thank Purity Flowers for the beautiful organisation they've done, not only in here, but on the coffin earlier today. Truly amazing. Jacques from Mossy Funeral Services, yeah, so professional, really unbelievable, right from the start. Unbelievable. Thank you so much for taking all that stress away from the family. To Dominitinis, thank you very much for, throughout our lives, from christenings to marriages to a couple of funerals. Thank you for always being there for us. To Peter, your brochures are unbelievable. Honestly, you've put together meticulously exactly the way you are. Thank you very much. And then, for those of you who don't know, we had a burial service for my dad this morning on the farm, on a spot that he chose. And I would just like to say thank you very, very, very much to Josh and to Nicholas for everything they did to make the next 100 years for my dad exactly where he wants to be, for making memories for us today that we'll never forget. A more fitting morning we couldn't have had as a family, and I truly, truly thank you very much. I'd like to invite you all to coffee or a glass of sea salter and lots of nice eats next door in the hall afterwards, please. Please come and join us. I know my dad would love you to be there. 2 last thanks. The first one is to all of you. I can't mention people by name for things that you've done in his lives, but every single one of you here today has done and made memories for him in his life. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. We all do. My whole family does. And lastly, and I think most fittingly, I'd like to thank our mom for everything and everything that she's done for Daddy. You have no idea how she's been the glue in our family and everything that she did every day for my dad. I can't even begin to name things because it's impossible. We just want to thank you, Ma. And I promise you, Dad, we'll be there for Ma for the rest of her life. Thank you to everybody for coming.
All we still have to do is to sing about grace, because that puts it all together. So we're going to do it standing if you can, and then afterwards I'm just going to end this service by reading you this prayer on the back of the leaflet. So let's sing Amazing Grace. The Lord deserves this. The Lord will keep you and guide you and bless you wherever you are and whatever you remind of this day. We end by reading this. One night I dreamt I was walking along the road with the Lord. Scenes from my life flashed across the sky. In each I noticed footprints in the sand. Sometimes there were 2 sets of footprints. Other times there were only 1. During the low periods of my life, I could see only 1 set of footprints. So I said, "You promised me, Lord, that you would walk with me always. Why, when I have needed you most, you have not been there for me?" The Lord replied, "The times when you have seen only 1 set of footprints, my child, is when I carried you." Bless you all.